Conflict and Collaboration presentation by Alana Signer. So today I'm going to be discussing two separate TED Talks. One is going to be talking about collaboration, and the other is going to be talking about conflict. So the first TED Talk that I'll be discussing is Build a Tower, Build a Team. The presenter was Tom Wujek, and in this TED Talk he discusses a building activity that he does with groups. And it's just building a tower with spaghettis. You can, what's seen in the image, except there's only one marshmallow. And there's a certain amount of time to complete the activity. And so it seems really simple, but it's actually quite difficult. And because it is a physical activity, it actually forces people to collaborate quite quickly. Now, when going through, he's been doing this for many years, and he's seen multiple groups do it. And, when all is said and done, what group performs the best is kindergarten graduates. And what group performs most poorly? It's MBA graduates. And you might be asking yourself why. It can actually be sort of explained in the fact that MBA graduates are very narrow-minded. They're looking at just the end goal, and it's just one sole focus, having a tall tower. And so what happens is they build up the tower, stick the marshmallow on top, and then it all falls. Whereas the kindergarten graduates are actually a little bit more flexible. They're a little bit more agreeable. I mean, with the MBA graduates, they do tend to also have some power play that comes in and kind of sort of disrupts the harmony of the team, whereas the kindergartners don't really have that as much or at all. But the kindergartners, what happens is they keep the marshmallow in focus at all times. And what they do is they build out and they build the model, and whatever works, then they kind of continue with that. And if it doesn't work, then they try something new again. And what Wujek really wants us to know is that they have the capacity to play in prototypes, and that this sort of playing with prototypes and accepting that the first thing that you do is not going to be the last is really important. And so that's why the kindergartners succeed, is because they have the flexibility and the openness and the want to kind of build off what they did before to make something better. Now, some of the final takeaways from Build a Tower, Build a Team were that there is a winning combination, and that is a team that has specialized skilled people and specialized facilitation people. Now, what I mean by specialized skilled people is that Wujek found that on teams that had CEOs, they actually performed really well. And that's because that person would be considered to be a specialized, skilled person. Now, to sort of one-up that, he also found that teams that not only had a CEO, but also had the executive administration assistant on them, well, they did, even better, like I was saying. And really what it is what it boils down to is you have someone who kind of has a background in knowing what they're doing and managing people. And then you have another person who is just used to organizing everything and, making sure that everybody comes into place to have, an executive administration assistant wants to keep the harmony of the day. They're going to keep the harmony of the group. So that's why having those two types of people on the team is going to create an environment for success. And, also, this activity provides a shared experience, a common language, and a common stance. And this is really important because, a few weeks ago, we did an activity in where we talked about icebreakers. And really, the majority of the class really touched upon the fact that having activities that center around where people find out commonalities about each other is really important in terms of fostering cohesion or fostering sort of a trust. And that's what you want in a group, is you want a trusting environment. Now with common language, like that doesn't even mean English and French. That means being on the same page, because two people can, speak the same language and, nothing is making sense. And so I think by having a physical activity in where you really need to communicate with people, everybody kind of learns how to communicate in a short amount of time, and sort of that stressful situation kind of makes people buckle down and know what's important. So the next TED Talk was Dare to Disagree. The presenter for this TED Talk was Margaret Heffernan, and this one dealt with conflict. And so she sort of starts with an anecdote about a doctor, and her name was Alice Stewart. And then she also has an anecdote about a man who's in a corporation who's like a whistleblower, in the sense that he speaks up about a medical device that he feels people need more training on. And he sort of speaks up when nobody else nobody else was speaking up. And then at the very, we sort of learn that everybody had the same ideas as him, just, but nobody was saying anything. So, so how long was this medical device going to be sold, or et cetera, before someone spoke up and was like, whoa, maybe we need to kind of back it up a little bit. So really, she's telling us, don't be afraid of this, to challenge the status quo. Just because everybody is saying jump off a bridge, as your parents used to say, doesn't mean you need to jump off the bridge. And disregarding, do not disregard facts to make something more palpable. So with Alice Stewart, she did research on pregnant women and cancer in small children in affluent families. And she found out that x-rays are really bad for pregnant women. And she published her findings, and nobody did anything about it, for quite some time, because they had all the facts in front of them, but they didn't want to accept it. So she's really big on, openness. And this is Heffernan, that she's really big on. Openness is just the beginning, because you really have to get over that hurdle, and where people also have to accept what you're saying. And then the last is, do not give up in what you believe. And you have to have confidence. You have to have conviction. And I mean, Alice Stewart, that doctor, for 25 years, made her case about women and x-rays. She did not give up. She kept trying to figure out different ways for people to hear her. It involved actually her finding a colleague who had opposing viewpoints as her, and having him go through her research and go through her studies and try to disprove her. And that made her case much stronger. So, you always have to be creative in how you approach something. And again, kind of getting back to that central theme, she used conflict to her advantage. So in Dare to Disagree, Heffernan discusses constructive criticism. And this is taking criticism and, putting it in a positive light, using criticism to your advantage. And so she wants you to get out and find people who aren't going to create echo chambers for you, because that's what happened with Alice Stewart. She didn't want to find someone who agreed with her. She wanted to find someone who was going to have opposing views, so that, it could challenge her and she could feel more confident in her answers. And so you want to find people who are different from you. You need to have patience, because they are going to have different viewpoints than you. So you're going to have to actually be open and willing to listen to what they say. You have to have energy. It is exhausting trying to always prove your point, but at the same time, it's for the betterment of what you are doing. And then there's an aspect of love. And the reason why Heffernan says that is because you're not coming at it from a quote unquote trolling perspective. You're not giving criticism to give criticism. You're giving criticism to make something better. So you care about the person, and you're trying to form a collaboration. You're using that conflict for collaboration. You're not, just saying something to be mean and undercutting something. So it does come from a place of love. Now, the final takeaways are really that in order to have constructive criticism, in order to have positive conflict, you kind of have to be able to, an organization, a company needs to create a culture that fosters that kind of environment, because it takes skill and practice in order to have constructive criticism or to have positive conflict. It's not something that kind of comes easily, because people don't wake up in the morning going, let's go to work and have an argument. People tend to try to avoid tense situations. And so you really have to work on the skills on how to have positive dialogue and how to attack conflict in a way that's going to be beneficial. It also requires an environment that allows for no defiance of authority. Um, if people believe that their opinions and viewpoints are not going to be utilized or not respected, they might not speak up. If people are always kind of like, oh, my boss says it's my way or the highway, they might not be willing to voice their opinions. There has to be a culture that has an open environment for that. And then also the lastly is that that culture needs to accept that conflict is beneficial, because a lot of times, more often than not, conflict is looked upon as being something negative. And the truth of the matter is that if conflict is utilized in the correct way, if people are willing to have a trusting and safe and open environment in where they're, saying things that are constructive, well, then it's going to be beneficial. So that's just really something important to sort of hone in on for, say, like something like a company culture. So my definition of conflict is that it helps to flesh out ideas, it mitigates groupthink, it stems from misunderstanding, and it's not always negative. So those are, to me, the biggest things that I took away, and those are the things that I think of when I think conflict in terms of group effectiveness. Now, kind of other topic, or another topic that sort of feeds into this, is the devil's advocate, which we've had pop up in our literature over the last few weeks. And a devil's advocate is someone who is chosen, well, can be chosen. Someone can also choose to take on that role, but it is a role within the group that is specifically there to contrast what everybody else is saying. So it is a purposeful, it is a role that is specifically to challenge and to create conflict. But when you look at conflict in terms of words like helping, mitigate groupthink, like mitigate something negative, say, and not always negative, and stems from misunderstanding. When you put those sort of meanings to conflict, then you look at it in a very different way. That devil's advocate is there to help vet ideas before they go live. And it is necessary to make sure that everybody on the team has, is challenged, that there isn't just one idea that everyone's like, oh yeah, that sounds great. You really want to have a great product, say for something that's a product, or have something that's beneficial, have something that's going to help the bottom line, or even just help the group as a whole. And conflict, and specifically in what we've sort of learned about the devil's advocate, is one way of getting there. So that sort of rounds out my definition on conflict. And thank you.